Right, Shatnerverse Trilogy review. Before I share my thoughts into what is one of the craziest book trilogies I've ever read, I do want to quickly talk about the news, the rumours that William Shatner could be returning to the Star Trek universe. That's right, I'm going to take a video that would otherwise be wonderfully evergreen and just make it a current video. Why not? The news is that William Shatner is reportedly in talks to return to the Star Trek universe in some sort of Star Trek Picard-esque series. Well, actually, there's a couple of rumours swirling around that it's going to be like a Picard-style limited series run, or he might make an appearance in Strange New Worlds or something like that. As you can tell by my facial reactions, I don't care, really. Actually, I do care. I don't like modern Star Trek's absolute infatuation with digging up the past. Star Trek is absolutely obsessed with the past, which is ironic given the fact that it's a show that is set in the future, and we just can't move on. We cannot move on, can we? And now we have William Shatner rumoured to be returning again. We need to move on. We need to make new stories featuring new people and move this whole thing on. I don't care for nostalgia. And what we have seen with Star Trek just doing these kind of revisits and these member-berry shows just doesn't work for me. I didn't care at all for Star Trek Picard. Rumour is as well that they're trying to bring back Kate Mulgrew for a Janeway legacy show. Oh, no. I mean, they've already done that with Prodigy. Janeway doesn't need to come back. And I hope Kate Mulgrew does a Avery Brooks and tells them to all go fuck off. William Shatner, we had the wonderful Unification short. I thought that was really good. He's 93 years old. He's done great. I don't need this. There are going to be people out there who are going to absolutely lap it up. I couldn't give a shit. Make some new Star Trek. Impress me with new stuff. Just stop living in the past, Star Trek, please. Right, let's talk about the reason why you're here. The Odyssey Trilogy. Ashes of Eden, The Return, and Avenger. So, it's a big old meaty boy, isn't it? This took me months to read. I had never read it before. My relationship with Star Trek books is a bit weird. When I was a kid, I absolutely loved them. I have very fond memories of going on holiday, and I was reading the Eugenics Wars books, and I spent more time reading that than I did in the pool. So, but yeah, somewhere along the line, I just kind of stopped reading, not just Star Trek books, but just stopped reading in general. But recently, about a year ago, I started getting back into Star Trek books. For years, I've had Star Trek books everywhere. I've got all around me, I've got hundreds and hundreds of Star Trek books. So I thought, what would be the best book for me to get into? It wasn't actually this trilogy first. It was Gene Roddenberry's novelization of the motion picture, which that was quite something. Very horny, a very horny read. But I caught the bug. I caught the bug again. And now I'm back into Star Trek books. I read the motion picture and I thought, well, I want to challenge myself. And what's another legendary book series? And yes, I had this and I was like, well, yeah, I mean, yeah, why not? I've heard lots of things about it over the years. The Shatnerverse, the Resurrection Trilogy. It didn't disappoint. What did I think about it? Well, let's go through each book. The three of them, they're not just written by William Shatner. They're also written by... the names. I should just look in the book and tell you. Judith and Garfield Reeves Stevens. They've written loads of Star Trek books over the years, and I think they've also got some actual episode credits. So they know Star Trek inside and out, so it makes sense for William Shatner to team up with them. The one thing that I do want to say, and I don't want this to discredit Shatner's work or anything, he's got a line of books that were written way before this, the Tech War series. I'm never really sure how much of it was actually William Shatner's. How much did he write? Was he just, I don't know, lounging on a couch eating grapes and just expanding on some ideas in his head while the Reeve Stevens team were just going, Okay, I don't know. He's a very talented, creative. So yeah, how much of it did he actually write? I don't know. But there's a lot of references in here that I'm like, did William Shatner know that? I don't know. So that seems like that was probably a Reeve Stevens thing. First book, Ashes of Eden. Of the 3 books in the trilogy, it's the one that's kind of it's a bit of an outlier because it doesn't chart the resurrection, it's just setting things up. The whole thing you could really just take as a prologue. It's bookended with Spock on Viridian 3 standing over the grave of Captain Kirk, so immediately following the events of Generations. It takes place almost entirely in the past, with the exception of the Spock bookends, and takes place just shortly after the events of the Undiscovered Country, so everybody has retired, the Enterprise has been decommissioned. It kind of treads on some familiar beats, so Kirk is once again feeling kind of useless and restless and doesn't really know what to do with himself. So very similar to how we find him in Generations and, perhaps earlier on in the film series in The Wrath of Khan, just feeling old and worn out and not particularly useful. But then that all changes. He comes across this very mysterious woman called Telani. Not sure if I'm getting that right. Let's just call her Talani. And she's from a planet called Chal, and they are a kind of a hybrid, Klingons and Romulans. Very exotic. Kirk is absolutely besotted with her, and the book goes to great lengths to describe her beauty in sequences that I have to just assume were probably written by Shatner, because this book gets a bit horny. Obviously, every woman in the entire universe just loves Kirk. The story evolves into being this kind of big universal conspiratorial episode. So we find out that Charl is that its people might be harbouring some giant super weapon, and there's potentially the involvement of Starfleet as well, and there's an arsehole admiral who goes way back to Kirk's origins when he was serving on the Farragut. It gets big, it gets messy. The Charl buy the Enterprise A, and Kirk serves on it to protect the planet of Charl. While you've got all of that going on, you've got Sulu, Chekhov and Uhura, and they're involved in some black ops, and they're trying to locate this big massive Klingon super weapon, and basically the two plots just converge into this giant massive conspiracy. Very, very reminiscent in terms of how it's constructed to the Undiscovered Country, and considering the fact this takes place very shortly after the events of that film, it's a bit samey. In universe, if I was in Starfleet, I'd be like, wait, so what? Cartwright was a massive bellend and was trying to disrupt peace talks. Now you've got this other guy, and he's also a bellend, and he's trying to bugger stuff up. Basically, don't trust anyone at Starfleet. Maybe Picard was actually onto something. Who knows? But yeah, it gets all big and actiony, and the Enterprise A is destroyed, gets blown up in this big climatic battle, and Kirk wins. This book and the other two just feel like Kirk fan fiction that's been written by the man himself. But it is also at the same time just full of really deep Star Trek references. You get the book opening up with Kirk's early days serving on the Farragut and the ambush by the gas alien from... what's the episode? Obsession. That's it, Obsession. We get references to that. So it kind of fleshes out the universe, and I just think it's really smart use. It's almost like a greatest hits. The whole trilogy feels like greatest hits, going back to kind of deep cuts from Kirk's service. From a writing standpoint, though, and this book of the three does this the best. In the way the characters are written, the way they speak, feels very spot on how they actually are. When I'm reading, say, Spock say something, or Bones, it feels like I'm reading them in their voices, and it doesn't feel jarring. It doesn't feel like it's not something that they would say. So I feel like the dialogue's pretty spot on. Saying that, though, there is the whole Sulu and Chekhov stuff, because they have some clashes, because Chekhov's really angry in this book. I don't really know why, but he's just really angry, and he's angry with Sulu, and he punches him at one point, and it's very kind of dramatic, but it feels forced, the drama and the tension tension between the two feels very forced. Kind of the weaker stuff is with them. These two are friends, right? We see them in Final Frontier camping together, so it's a bit jarring, and it just feels very much like it's drama for the sake of drama. I think of the three, The Ashes of Eden was probably the easiest one for me to read. Going into the second book, The Return, this picks up immediately off the back of the epilogue at the end of the last book. This book is wild. This is absolutely nuts. An insane story. So basically you have the Romulans and the Borg. They form an alliance to destroy the Federation. They steal Kirk's body from Viridian 3 and they resurrect him using Borg technology. And then they reprogram him to kill Picard. Meanwhile, Picard and Crusher and a few others, they're on another Black Ops mission. They're off to check out the status of a remote Starfleet outpost, which they discover has been assimilated. So not good. Giant kind of galactic stakes adventure with the Borg and the Romulans. How will they possibly stop them this time? This was written before First Contact. I don't know if they were getting notes from First Contact. I highly doubt they were. But the depiction of the Borg in this book, it's very off. It's very off what we would get in First Contact and subsequently on like Voyager and moving forward. But there's elements in it that feel very similar to First Contact. The Borg are described being very fleshy and kind of disgusting, and there's lots of kind of body horror stuff. Some of the passages in this book describing them is grim. Lots of talk about the smell of like rotting flesh. It's really gross. And the book does a really good job of just making the Borg just seem like this absolutely repugnant, awful assimilation is absolutely worse than death. Up until this point, the Borg were mechanical hybrids, mostly mechanical in their depiction. And you look at the Best of Both Worlds, I mean, we see assimilation for the first time, but it's very much more like just a cosmetic thing and brainwashing. But no, here, it seems kind of irreversible. There's some crazy stuff. The book does not hold back. You get depictions of like assimilated kids. There's even Borg dogs described in this book. I shit you not. I loved that. I thought that was absolutely wild. Yeah, we get the incorporation of contemporary Star Trek stuff. So Picard, the crew of the Enterprise. This predates the Enterprise E. They're basically without a ship at this point because it's after generations. Again, there's some forced drama in this one. Riker and Spock kind of have this back and forth where Riker is questioning Spock's loyalties, and that doesn't go down very well. We also get some Bashir in this, so there's an attempt to kind of really weave in all of the various shows, which again I really liked. We also get some fan service. We get the Defiant class ship in this. It gets renamed the Enterprise at the end, just a temporary kind of thing to see out the story, and the story is properly nuts. I don't know if I've said that already. The Romulans is led by this woman, the main antagonist, and she is supposedly connected to the Romulan commander from Balance of Terror. So again, there's that nice kind of link back to Kirk's past, which I quite liked. Spock gets captured by the Borg, and the Borg refuse to assimilate him as they think he's already a Borg. And this ties back to the motion picture when he mind melded with V'Ger. So this kind of plays into the long-standing fan theory that V'Ger is actually Borg. Really, really leans into that. Didn't care for it, to be honest with you. I think the universe is a very, very big place, and I think just to say that Borg is an evolution of V'Ger and came from the same place, and V'Ger's this Borg probe, it just makes the universe smaller, and yeah, I've never really cared for it at all. But this book leans into that. Kirk's resurrection, it's a trip. It's a trip. Once he's resurrected and programmed to be this servant of this Borg-Romulan alliance, he kind of goes on a bit of a rampage tour throughout the universe. He has a big fight with Worf on Kronos. He attacks Geordi and Data on an archaeological dig. Basically just becomes like a big kind of unstoppable killing machine, just like a resurrected Kirk Terminator. And I always kind of laugh at this because I imagine Kirk as he was in Generations, you know, on getting old, getting on a bit. Sorry if you're old. And, you know, being a little bit out of shape. And in the book, he's described as like leaping over things and doing flips and roundhouse kicking Worf in the face. And that's what I have in my head. And I just think it's really funny. I can't imagine it. Well, I can imagine it, and what I imagine just looks really, really funny. This one of the three is just wild. It's a complete fever dream. It is completely unrestrained fan fiction. The Enterprise Defiant goes to the Borg homeworld, and Picard and Kirk are successful in destroying the Borg homeworld, and plot armor everywhere because they can't be destroyed somehow. I'm not really sure how that works. All these books, you've just got to take a massive leap and just go, okay. And if you can do that, you're gonna have a good time. It's absolutely absurd, but it is undeniably entertaining, and I had a good time reading it. Constantly kind of stopping at the end of a sentence and going, "Wow, really?" If you've not read any of these books, just give them a go. Really kind of pop sci-fi, really accessible. I think they're nonsense, but they're well written. Like well written nonsense. Pure hokum. The final book, Avenger, is probably my least favourite of the three, although it's got some things in it that just feel really kind of prescient. So this book takes place a period of time after the end of the Return. So at the end of Return, Kirk seemingly sacrifices himself. He kind of does what Data does to Picard at the end of Nemesis. He kind of force transports Picard up and pulls this lever that destroys the Borg homeworld and seemingly him along with it. Turns out he didn't die because obviously Kirk, he can't die. He cannot die at all. The end of Return does something similar to Ashes of Eden, where we kind of end the book on this thing that kind of links us into Avenger, which again is quite neat. I like that through line running through the trilogy. We catch up with everybody some time afterwards, basically, and the Federation is in deep crisis. There's this deadly virus that's destroying atmospheres and destroying entire planets and their crops and stuff. Charl has been, the planet from the first book, has been absolutely ravaged by it. That planet was supposedly this kind of idyllic, beautiful, picturesque planet, and it's been completely destroyed. Starfleet set up this blockade to try and contain the virus, and then it's not quite working. The Enterprise E is established at this point. I think this book came out about 97, 98, so obviously after the events of First Contact. And we find out that there's basically this kind of galactic conspiracy. Shock. But this one involves a group of Vulcan kind of eco-terrorists called the Symmetrists. We find out that Sarek and Amanda were part of the Symmetrist group. This book, once again, has links to the past, some really interesting stuff. So we get a flashback to Kirk's time on the colony with Kodos the Executioner, so that's a link back to Conscience of the King, and we find out that Kodos was a Symmetrist as well, so that's a bit of a kind of a weird retcon. But obviously it's not canon anyway. We also find out that Sarek's Bendai syndrome was actually faked and he was actually murdered, and that's like, whoa, what's going on there? And again, big conspiracy stuff, lots of twists. Kirk and Picard not sure if they can trust each other, and lots of drama around this giant virus that's ravaged the entire universe. Reading this in 2025, you're just like, wow, this kind of galactic plague, this galactic pandemic. It's like COVID, but just on this massive intergalactic scale. I think the book does a really good job of describing and selling just how the situation just being this really, really terrible one. The Federation is absolutely on its arse. They don't know where this virus is coming from. They don't know how to isolate it. They don't know how to cure it. They are literally predicting that the entire Federation is going to just fall into a state of disrepair imminently. And you feel that urgency. What makes this the least enjoyable of the three, the lesser of the three? I don't know. I think I was probably just tired at this point. It's a big old book, and I was getting a bit tired of it. It was very predictable. All three of the books are quite predictable in their twists and turns, but there's one particular twist in Avenger. You're just reading it and you're just like, when's this guy going to turn out to be, a secret villain? And he is. Okay, great. I need to wrap this up. We've been going for ages. The three books. My favourite is Ashes of Eden. Closely followed by The Return, and then Avenger. The books, they're nuts. They're absolutely crazy, but they're highly enjoyable. If you want to get lost in 1,000+ pages written by a crazy creative lunatic, but also kind of bolstered by some authors that really understand the universe and really appreciate the universe and have this kind of desire to try and tie things into not only Kirk, but the wider universe, I think you're going to enjoy it. Very pulpy, very pop sci-fi, very accessible. As a rating, it's quite hard because they are crap, but I like them, but I think that pretty much kind of describes my thoughts and feelings on most of Star Trek, to be honest with you. Yeah, get upset with me in the comments. I'm going to give this, I'm going to give all three just a solid 6 out of 10. There we go. That's my review. What Trek books should I read next? Put them down in the comments below. I probably have them, so let me know what I should be reading next. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Support me on Patreon, that would be great. And yeah, until the next one, live long and prosper.